Thanks for coming out. This is Managing Media in the Cloud. My name is Travis Tidwell. I'm one of the lead developers for allplayers.com. You can see my Twitter handle there. I've been involved with Drupal for a pretty long time. I've been around since Drupal 4.7. And yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that's when I got started. It's actually amazing that I'm still around after that. But from the very, very beginning, my interest has been multimedia. Just to give you a little bit of background about my involvement with multimedia, it started in Drupal 4, kind of migrated a little bit into Drupal 5, where I wrote this video module called the Flash Video Module. If any of you guys have been around a really long time, you may remember that module. Since then, it's been deprecated, but I've had this interest in media for a really long time, particularly videos. I do have some interest in images, audio. But my main focus has been video, just because it's kind of challenging to deal with video in the web. And so I find that challenge, I actually like that challenge. Lately, my interest has been in presenting media. I'm trying to build some media presentation layers. But I also have been taking a really big interest in trying to manage media from cloud-based sources. Just because I think everyone probably already knows that that's just kind of where the web is moving. It's moving into this more cloud-based, how do you deal with resources that are live outside of your Drupal install. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So everyone knows this, the web is changing. And it seems like within the past couple of years, the web is really kind of being molded into something that was completely different, especially like back in the Drupal 4 days. Websites are becoming more like web applications. No longer is a website just this black box site that you go to. It is something that is interacted by more than just a browser. Like handsets are interacting with websites now. And so they're having to become molded into different platforms. And so they really are becoming these web applications. Also, websites are no longer these siloed monstrosities. Back whenever I first started working with Drupal, you installed Drupal and it just did everything. It was in charge of comments, it was in charge of forums, it was in charge of user accounts, and of course it still is to an extent. But what I'm noticing is a trend, and that trend is kind of moving away to a more distributed architecture, where you integrate services more and more today, and integration of those services into Drupal is becoming more important, which is kind of the next point I make here, which is integration is starting to become more important than implementation. So instead of baking in your own features, it's actually might be more worthwhile to look at other services out there, which is kind of where CDNs come into play. Also, another trend that I notice is that we're kind of going back to the basics. Back whenever the web standards were first written, I think they got it right, and web kind of made it wrong in a way. Like we kind of abused the original web standards, and what I'm noticing is websites are starting to take on this more RESTful architectures, which is really what the web was all about to begin with. And more along the lines of these distributed models of this server is responsible for this business logic, this server is responsible for this business logic. They all come together and work together in this beautiful way. Well, CDNs, this whole move to using CDNs is kind of the same move in this direction. One thing I don't know if any of you guys have ever played around with, there's this thing going on right now that's called Jekyll. Have any of you guys looked at that, Jekyll with GitHub? It really is amazing, and I really feel like Drupal should take a hard look at what Jekyll's doing, because they are taking this go back to the basics to the next level. They are making it so that you can literally build and host websites without any content management system as just HTML and serving up these files. Well, one thing we can learn about Jekyll is it really highlights the need for services-based infrastructure, and that websites are no longer going to become these content management systems. They're going to be basically an aggregate of services and content that lives elsewhere, not on the server. And so people are going to have to upload, they're going to have to manage their media, they're going to have to manage their photos, not necessarily by uploading it directly to the website. They need to be able to manage it by having these pieces hosted in all different areas, in all different servers. And also CDNs are becoming more crucial for file resource management. I know a lot of people know what a CDN is, but I do want to take a little bit of time to just talk about what a CDN is. So a CDN is a content delivery network. That's what CDN stands for. And really what it is a cloud-based file management servers. These are servers that are specifically used to manage file resources. And as everyone knows, if you have a website, you are concerned about files. Even if it's not media files, you're concerned about JavaScript, you're concerned about CSS, you're concerned about all these external resources that are files that have to be loaded from the web page. And so what CDNs do is they represent these files in these distributed networks across the globe. It's really cool what they do. You upload your resources to a central CDN, and that CDN literally clones your resources to other servers around the globe. So that whenever you visit a website with a CDN resource, the files are actually downloaded from a server that's closest to you. And what the result is, this reduces latency, it increases download speeds, and from every file required by the page, resulting in faster page load times. So this is a big performance boost that you'll get from your website by moving a lot of your file resources onto a CDN. Now for small files, this isn't really that big of a deal. The CDNs are it's kind of easy to deal with the smaller the file sizes. But what I'm going to be communicating and talking to you guys about is how do you deal with resources that are really large. I'm talking about 1 gigabyte files, like these massive videos. How in the world are you supposed to manage those within a content delivery network? And also, how does all of this, what I've just talked about, how does it relate to Drupal? Well, as it turns out, Drupal is also changing. I've noticed this big trend that Drupal is kind of moving along with, this trend that I see in the web. Drupal is taking on more of a framework atmosphere. We're starting to integrate Symfony. Everyone I'm sure in here has heard that Drupal is starting to move into Symfony, which is more of a framework. We're becoming more RESTful, it's going to be great for everybody once this happens. And I was even talking to Robert about this. I have this vision that a Drupal website will no longer be a Drupal website. It'll be your Drupal website could be scattered amongst 4 or 5 different servers, and each server is responsible for a different aspect of that site, and they all aggregate together to form a web experience. You think you're visiting a website, but what you're really visiting is an aggregate of content delivered by many, many, many different servers. And this is really what's going to happen. Once we bring in this whiskey, we are going to become a distributed content management system. It's going to be very distributed across many different servers, and that's going to be a very exciting thing when that happens. And also, I've noticed that there's this better front-end and back-end abstraction with Drupal. Some really exciting stuff that's going on. But what about multimedia? This is something that I feel is still, today, somewhat ignored. About what is the future? What does the future hold for multimedia? These very, very large files that people have to manage. Obviously, it's going to be content delivery networks, but how in the world are you supposed to manage these within Drupal? So what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about how you manage them today. I'm going to talk about and a little bit about kind of where the future is going with multimedia in Drupal. So let's talk about media management in Drupal today. So Drupal core, as is, if you go out and download Drupal core, Drupal 7, it is actually pretty good for a very specific use case. In fact, it's a use case that nobody probably will need it when it comes to multimedia. But it does it. It does this use case that nobody wants really well. And that use case is if you want to manage local media on a per entity basis, meaning you don't really care if this video is shared amongst other content in your site. You just care that you just want to get this video on your site and you just want to attach it to this node. And you don't care if it's on your local files. files. You paid your $7.99 a month to your hosting service, and they give you 10 gigs. So you're okay with that. And if that's all you need, then Drupal core by itself is pretty much all you need, because it comes with something called a file field and an image field. And here you can see I'm actually adding an image field. You can provide a loud extension, so you can say, hey, I want this to kind of take videos. I want to put it in a media file directory. And here you can see I'm creating those fields. They're file fields. The widget is file. Here's an image field. The image widget is image. Tons and tons of videos out there that teach you how to do this. Unfortunately, when it comes to multimedia, that's not what people want. So what most people want with multimedia is they want to be able to pull from many, many different sources. They want to be able to not only pull from many different sources, they want to be able to push to all different kinds of sources. And this is where the media module kind of steps in and fills in the gaps. And so for those people that need that CDN, throughout this presentation, I'm going to consider YouTube a CDN because YouTube is a CDN. A lot of people think it's just a video site, but YouTube really is a glorified video CDN, just like Vimeo and all of these other video sites. They are CDNs. So if you go out and you download the media module, there's the link right there. You can also download some helper modules. So let's say you're interested in YouTube videos. You go out and download the YouTube module. That's not the only two that you can be interested in. If you're interested in Vimeo, there's a Vimeo flavor of these plugins that you can also download. They all integrate with this media module. And what they do is they provide these allowed URI schemes. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have ever looked into these file stream wrappers. I am going to talk about file stream wrappers in this presentation, but you'll notice that they add like this Vimeo : / they add this YouTube : / and this public : / These are actually file stream wrappers that tell Drupal how, it basically provides a standard interface for Drupal to interact with files, and depending on how you implement the stream wrapper, it thinks it's just going to read a file, but it's really going to read from YouTube or Vimeo based on those schemas. So that's what those modules provide. So the media module is really cool because not only does it allow you to upload local files, but it allows you to select files from the web. It is essentially becoming like this browser, this file browser for the internet. It's really cool. So you have this upload. So you can actually upload to your local file system, just like the normal file field. But then you can also have this web link where you can actually embed a video from the web. In fact, now that I'm just now looking at this, I realize I didn't tell you how to get to this. You actually set this up how you would set up any normal file field. So whenever you see in this previous screen, you see in the files, this is when you add files to your content type. All you have to do is change that widget to the media file selector. And that actually, what that does is that brings in this. So sorry I missed that slide, but that's all you have to do. So it's really, really cool. You can provide, and here you see, because I have the Vimeo media module installed and I have the YouTube video module installed, I get those providers. So then it also provides this really cool file browser for the internet that helps you manage all your media sources and attach them to individual pieces of content. But here's where it becomes powerful, is now, instead of attaching content to each node, so like let's say you want to upload a video, instead of having to create a node to wrap around that piece of video, you can use the media module and it basically manages all your videos and all your media as separate entities. I'm sure you've heard of this before. Entities in Drupal 7 is just an extra layer below node that is just a way to wrap data. And then you can create nodes that are basically nodes are entities. So basically, media module allows you to manage all your media in this media library. Now, currently, I'm using the stable version. There is a 2x version, but I will say to just tread lightly with it. Don't use the 2x version on a live site because it's still in beta. It's still considered unstable. But they are working to correct some of the main issues that people are having with this file browser, where it's specifically permissions and also per user file libraries. Is there some of the stuff that they're doing, some effort there. I haven't been keeping in as much tune as I'd like to with what they're doing, but I know they're doing some great things. So here's kind of the point I want to make with this. This works on a per content basis. Every change that is made to an external resource must be reflected to Drupal. And this is somewhat of a headache. Anytime that I deal with a client that has all the resources managed from an external CDN, let's say YouTube is a great example. If they go over to YouTube and change the title, that will not reflect back to Drupal. And one thing you have to keep in mind is whenever you're linking Drupal to an external CDN or an external entity, is you have to have this syncing mechanism. So that if you make changes to the metadata from one side, that has to be reflected on the Drupal side. And if you just use the media module and only use the media module, you are not going to get that. That reflection is not going to be made. But the good news is we can fix it. So, the question is, how do we synchronize content with external media providers? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about feeds. In this next section, I'm going to go and walk you through what feeds are, how you can use them to synchronize your content to an external CDN source. So throughout this example, I'm going to use YouTube. But keep in mind, YouTube is just an example here. Almost every single CDN provider out there provides some feed mechanism that you can use to sync with your Drupal site. And YouTube is beautiful. I love YouTube's feed API. It's beautiful. So here's just an example. You can go to YouTube and you can see all the feed types, and they provide this link. So here you can see it's http://gdata/youtube.com feeds, and then it has like this documentation on how you can pull in certain feeds. So here I could pull in all of Warner Brothers, trailers, which I actually did. I did that using this, and I'll even show you. I pulled in like close to 1,000 videos into my site from Warner Brothers feed. And if you actually go there in your browser to just kind of look at this, here's what you're actually given. Well, you're really given XML format, but I just like JSON because I'm a JavaScript guy, and so I find JSON a little bit more readable. But really, it's all doing the same thing. What YouTube is doing is it is providing you with data, just basically the metadata that's attached to your entities, your content that is on that external resource. And so the key here is to take this and feed it into Drupal. So now let's talk about that. Let's talk about feeds in Drupal. Good for you, there is an amazing module. And I don't say that about many modules, but feeds is really awesome. It's a great module that allows you to hook up to external CDN feeds to pull that content into your site. But it does kind of have a learning curve. Whenever I was first learning feeds, I was somewhat intimidated by it because they kind of bring in their own terminology. They have like their own language that they speak. And really, if you understand this language, you can get over that hump pretty quickly, which is why I'm going to talk about it. So in feeds, they have what's called a fetcher. Now, a fetcher is used to fetch a specific source's feed. So you will have a YouTube fetcher, or you'll have a Vimeo fetcher. The purpose of a fetcher is just to be able to translate feeds from different sources and go out and get it. Then they have what's called a parser. The parser is used to parse the feeds and put them into a common format that the feeds module understands. So so you'll actually have XML parsers. If you're bringing it in and it's an XML format, you'll have JSON parsers that will parse it if it's in JSON format and put it in like this common data struct. Then there's the processors. The processors are what actually take that data that's in that common data structure and they do something with the data. So you can actually have processors that build nodes. They can generate nodes. You can even have the processors that generate taxonomies. So you can feed into your Drupal site to not create nodes, but create like taxonomies. So if you have like this need to generate these massive amounts of taxonomies, you can use feeds to do that. And then there's this thing called the importer. The import is just kind of like he's kind of like the granddaddy. He's just one that manages everybody, makes sure that everyone communicates to everyone. He is, in classical terms, the controller. He is the guy that controls everyone, makes sure that they communicate, make sure that they do what they're supposed to with each other. So now let me walk you through how to set up feeds in your site. How are we doing on time? We're good. So the first thing you're going to want to do is install these modules. Okay? And I say all their dependencies because if I listed their dependencies, this list would just go on and on and on. But those are the modules you need. So go out and get them. Once you've actually installed those modules, the very first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to create a content type that's going to be able to act as your feed. So for my example in YouTube, I would create a YouTube feed content type. And anytime I create a new one of these, it's me basically linking up to a new YouTube feed. So you can actually create 5 different pieces of content that link to 5 different feeds in YouTube. After you've done that, you need to go to admin, and there's a thing called feed importers. I believe it's in structure, feed importers. You're going to click on that. Once you're in here, you're going to want to create what's called a new feed importer. I just labeled this the same as the content type. I really don't think there's much distinction. That's just what I called it. I called it YouTube feed. From there, you get a page that's going to intimidate the heck out of you. You're going to see a page that you're just going to be like, it's so Drupal. It's like, I dare you to try to understand me. There is a getting started, but it's pretty wordy. But really, all this is in the left-hand column, you see all the things that I previously talked about. So don't be intimidated. It's just those things. All you're doing is connecting what fetchers, what parsers, what processors you want to use within feeds. The very first one is the basic general settings. And you're going to need to click on that first. So over there on the far left, up at the top, you'll see it says Settings under Basic Settings. We're going to click on that. Once we're there, we need to link this feed to the content type that we just created, which was YouTube feed. That's it. That's it that we're going to do in the basic settings. After that, we're going to move on to the fetcher. Now, there is this YouTube playlist fetcher is one of the modules I told you guys to get. I recently wrote this module, and the reason why I had to write a fetcher for YouTube is because YouTube has paginated feeds. And if you used any other XML parser, you're only going to grab the first page. But what YouTube playlist fetcher does is it sits there and it tricks, and it does, it literally tricks the feeds into thinking that all of its pages are just one massive feed, which is why I was able to go out to Warner Brothers and import 900 videos into my Drupal site. Because it just sat there and paginated through all of them. It took like 10 minutes, but it did it.
You're not supposed to do that.
Huh? Yeah, it's like, when I was writing this, I was like, I wonder if YouTube is going to get mad at me for doing this. Or Warner Brothers. They wouldn't put it up there if it wasn't public. It's only just trailers. It's not like I was getting like videos. So after you've done that, you're going to go down to Parser, and you're going to select this thing called XPath XML Parser. Now, YouTube, by default, gives you XML. XPath is a way that you can pick little items out of XML and identify them as data you're interested in. We're going to do a little bit of XPath in this, but I'm going to kind of go over it. If you want to learn about XPath, go to Alan's Selenium thing next hour. Excuse me. After that, you're going to go and you're going to select the processor. You're going to select this node processor. This tells us we want to create new nodes for every single one of these things. And then after that, you're going to need to change the node settings of the processor and select the content type that you want to map to. In this particular case, I created a content type and I called it media. Now this media has fields that I want to link to my content. And then after that, we're going to land on this page, which is called the mappings. Now mappings is kind of where people are like, man, like I said, this is confusing if you're just doing this for the first time. All mappings does is it takes feed fields and it maps them to content type fields. fields, and I'm saying that because I'm saying that in terms of Drupal fields. Drupal fields, as you know it, can be mapped to fields that are in the XML file. So you're literally going to create a new one for every single field that you're interested in. And for YouTube, here are the ones that you're probably going to be interested in. You're going to be interested in this GUID, which is a globally unique ID. You're going to be interested in the title, the body. The media is going to be a link to the media, the media field you created, the images, and then there's this publish date. After that, we're going to do something called configuring Feeds Tamper. Now, Feeds Tamper is awesome, and it was one of those extra modules that I had to install at the beginning. What Feeds Tamper does is it allows you to alter the data that you're getting from the feed, alter it before you push it into what the Drupal feed field expects. Keep in mind, whenever you get a feed from somewhere, they may not give it to you in the format you expect. In this case, YouTube is giving me a date as like a date string, as an ISO date string, whereas the published date in Node expects a timestamp. So I have to do something to take that date string, convert it to a timestamp before I put it in there, and Feeds Tamper does that. When you click on that, all you have to do is configure. You just add a new plugin, and there is a string to Unix timestamp plugin for Feeds Tamper. And then that allows you to convert that to a timestamp before it's actually pushed to the publish date. And then once you're done with that, you're going to go to Settings of the XML Parser. Because you set up all the mappings, these will now show up. And here's where you need to do some little, some XPath magic to get this to show up correctly. What time is it? I'm okay. So now here's somewhat of an overview of what you're really going to be doing. You're going to be looking at the feed, which is over here on the right. You're going to be looking at that, and then you're going to basically be doing mapping. You're going to be telling the parser how to grab each one of those fields. So like right here, here's the video ID. This is from the feed, and I have up there where I'm converting it to a string, and I'm using XPath. There's a lot of documentation on XPath to basically go to media group /YT video ID. So it's actually going to take that and it's going to populate that into the video as the unique ID. So it's really, really powerful stuff. And then once you do that, you go and you create a new YouTube feed. You give it a name. You'll get this new URL thing right there. And here you can see I'm pasting author Warner Brothers. And this thing went forever. Like it cranked away, but what I ended up was like 900 videos. And so what is this actually doing? So what is this doing that's so important? This is actually synchronizing YouTube content with Drupal. And so any changes that I make to YouTube will be reflected into Drupal in Xcron Run. And I think that's an important thing to note here, is that we are actually doing a pull mechanism from CDN. We are pulling it back into your site. So that if anybody changes anything on the content delivery network, that gets pulled in and gets updated automatically on your Drupal site. So essentially, your site is synced with the external source. But keep in mind, everything I'm talking about now is pull. The Drupal site is just pulling at this point. Pulls in new content as they are added to YouTube. So not only does it edit or update, it also adds. So if you add new content on YouTube, that will get added to Drupal. So, but what about pushing content to a remote CDN? This is the hard part. So everything I've talked about right now is pulling content in. In order to complete that round trip, we have to be able to not only edit things within Drupal, so it's okay if you can edit it in YouTube and that gets pulled in, but let's talk about what if they want to edit a piece of content on Drupal and have that get pushed up to the CDN. Well, there's some bad news here. First of all, the implementations are very fragmented. You do not have a one win-all solution like feeds in the other direction. I'd love it if there was a way that you could do that you could just, in the same way that feeds pulls, it'll just push, but it's not that easy. Another thing that I want to highlight is that everything that's out there is heavily reliant on local file storage for uploading. And I think this is wrong, to be honest with you. I think that future versions and future mechanisms for CDN working, there's going to be some type of, you're going to be able to bypass the files folder altogether. I'd love to envision a future Drupal where there is no files folder. All files are CDN. We'll get there. Also, media module and third-party integration modules focus on reading media, not pushing. So if you go out and you install media YouTube and you expect to be able to create YouTube on your site and have that get added to your YouTube account online, think again, it's not going to happen. Those modules are used for reading and creating file stream wrappers that are essentially read-only stream wrappers is what they are. They are read-only. And also, there were, in Drupal 6, there were some modules that did this. I think there was one called Video Upload or something that did that. But it's Drupal 6. And it doesn't look like it's maintained anymore. So any modules that used to do this are outdated and they are no longer maintained, at least from what I could tell. If anybody knows of any module out there that's doing this, please let me know. Let's talk a little bit about the good news. Now the good news is Drupal core has the foundation for this functionality built into what are called file stream wrappers. And I want to talk a little bit about what file stream wrappers are. So as you can see here, the file stream wrapper, this is a class that is used as really kind of like a wrapper for an interface when interacting with a file. You have stream open, stream close, stream lock, read, write, all of these functions that you can do with a file. So let's talk about how these things work. I want you guys to understand the flow so that you can understand the goods and also the bads of this. So whenever you have a stream wrapper, let's say the client uploads, navigates to an upload page. Drupal delivers the file form to the client. The client uploads the file to the temp folder of Drupal. Now that's a big distinction there. When they're uploading, they're not uploading to the CDN. They have to upload to Drupal, to a temp folder, to like a locally temp folder. It's only then does the file stream wrapper kick in. The file, after upload, the stream wrapper, it sends the file to the CDN. The CDN then provides a resource token to Drupal, which then that gets saved in the stream wrapper that you know today. So when you read the file, you're reading it from the CDN. So if you were to implement a YouTube upload mechanism, which you could, using a file stream wrapper, this is what would happen. So there's the flow. So then every read from CDN, and I use CDN because that could be anything, CDN token will translate to a direct link to the CDN resource. A great example of a module that does this is Amazon S3 module. So if you go out there and you look at what that module does, it does that. It is a CDN file stream wrapper that allows you to basically replace your file system with Amazon S3, but there is a catch. They still have to upload it to your Drupal site, to the temp folder. Which is like, what I'm going to talk about. Here's the good. The good for file stream wrappers is that you can easily implement classes that treat all files, remote or local, basically the same way. And there is a lot of power to that. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of power. But here's the bad. The file is actually uploaded twice. It's double uploaded. And unlike rainbows, that's bad. You do not want double upload. Okay? So once it actually gets to your temp folder, that's already been uploaded once. And then once the file stream wrapper saves again, that gets uploaded to the CDN. So it's like this, it does like this leapfrog across. So this is bad on Drupal for a couple of reasons. The first thing is the file limitations on your Drupal servers will apply. So if your server has an upload limit of 100 megs and you want to upload a gig and you're thinking, hey, I'm using the Amazon S3 module and they allow me to upload a gigabyte file, this will fail because Drupal will cut it off. It says, I don't think so, because you're uploading to its temp folder. Also, this hogs bandwidth and processing from your Drupal server, and it's horrible for large multimedia files. It's really good for images. If all you care about is images, this will work great. But it's bad for video, because video is almost always over a gig or close to it, and you're uploading this massive file to your Drupal site. It will affect the Drupal server still has to manage that file as it's being uploaded. And it's just this massive stream coming into the server. Which is kind of why I want to talk about direct upload. I really feel like this is kind of the future of where these upload modules are going. And this is why this session is considered advanced, is because this is not really built out yet in Drupal. I'm kind of working on it, but I am going to have to show you some code because I actually implemented this for a client. Excuse me. I implemented this for a client and it worked out beautifully. And I just want to go over what I had to do to get this thing working. So direct upload. Let's go over the flow of how this works. So the client, just like they did before, they navigate to the upload page. The Drupal delivers a custom upload form. The client then authenticates with the CDN using like OAuth. They'll do some form of authentication. Now, according to what I had to do, the authentication actually happened before I delivered the form to the user, which some CDNs do that as well, where before you deliver the form to the client, you do some authentication on the server side with the CDN, and then they give you a token, and you hand that to with the form. But as far as YouTube is concerned, YouTube uses OAuth from the client. So the client does OAuth, sends authentication token to the client. The client then has authorization to upload directly to the CDN, and then after the upload occurs, the resource token goes from the CDN, and then I use JavaScript to auto-populate a form with the resource token. And so at that point, all Drupal really cares about is that token. It never sees the file. As far as it's concerned, that file is just a string, a very small string that it stores into the database. And then Drupal manages the CDN resource with the token in read-only Filestream wrappers. So you can still use Filestream wrappers, they're just going to be read-only at that point. So here's the good. The good is you completely bypass Drupal during media upload, which that's really good, especially if you're sending 1 gigabyte files to Drupal. The next thing is you let the CDN manage and upload limitations. It's really fast because now instead of your Drupal site maintaining the speed of upload, it's now a CDN that you're uploading directly to the CDN. Another thing is the files are never stored on your server. The upload occurs only once. We're not doing this double upload thing. And it's also really great for large media files. Now here there is some drawbacks. There is some bads. The bad is currently you have to build this yourself. For now, I'm working on it. It also requires client authentication, typically OAuth. That can get a little bit hairy, especially on the client side. But for the CDNs that require back-end authentication, those are a little bit easier. But right now, the client has to authenticate with the CDN. And also, and this kind of bothers me just from a software perspective, but now the Filestream wrappers are fragmented, where the upload is not handled within the same class as read. And that bothers me a little bit. But that is a problem. And then another thing is I use Swift Upload. And that's Flash. I know a lot of you are like, oh, Flash, really? Flash has its purpose and its upload. Nothing, even today, even HTML5 does not compete with Flash when it comes to upload. And Swift Upload is a beautiful library. If it's good enough for Google, it's good enough for me because Google uses it. So Swift Upload, let's talk about that. It is a Flash uploader that has complete JavaScript bindings. That's what I love about it. They don't know it's Flash because Swift Upload exposes its entire API as JavaScript, so you can communicate to it with JavaScript. And you can build the entire UI in HTML and CSS. So if you guys want to go out there and look at the documentation, there's the code. The very first step that you need to take is to first get it working without Drupal. That is the key. Get it working with the CDN by itself, without even Drupal. If you can get that working first, these next steps become super, super easy. Because the actual Drupal part is really thin. All of the Drupal aspect becomes like this widget. It becomes a field widget. Also, another thing is before you begin, study the docs. Almost every CDN has their own developer documentation. So like YouTube has their own documentation for direct upload. You see right here, YouTube protocol direct uploading. And that walks you through how to do it. There's other things, like I've dealt with a lot with Limelight. The particular client that I was working for, that's actually who I implemented this direct upload for, is Limelight. They have really good documentation as well. But the point is read them and understand the docs, because it's really important. So let's talk about what to do to actually get this to work. And the magic is in the thing that Drupal uses for its fields called Widget Information. If you think about what we're actually ending up with, we're ending up with a string that is a token that represents a file that's on an external resource. All we have to do is change the form mechanism to store it. We can do that very easily using a thing called Widget Information. You can see I created one called text CDN upload. I gave it a label. You can see my field type is text. It's not file, it's text, because that's what we end up with, and that's what's stored. At that point, we create the form, which is also easy. I'm not shorthanding this, people. This is really how long this function is. All you have to do is say element upload and provide your own theme for the CDN upload. Okay? So you define your hook widget form, but do nothing other than provide a custom theme for that form. The next thing that I like to do, and this is just to make your life easier, is to use a thing called hook library, which is going to basically using a single API to bring in all the JavaScript, all the CSS, and all your dependencies in a single call. And this is what it looks like. You can see I'm bringing in Swift Upload.js. I'm bringing in the jQuery Swift Upload.js, which is a jQuery wrapper around Swift Upload. I'm bringing in my own custom JavaScript, which I'll show you here in a little bit. It's like 4 lines long. And then I have my own CDN CSS file, because when I implemented this, I used jQuery UI so that I had this really beautiful jQuery UI progress indication as this thing was getting uploaded. And it's beautiful. And it had like a little percentage, and it looks really, really elegant. So the theme is actually the hardest part. But even then, it's not that bad, because remember what I said before this? I said what to do. The first step is to get it working outside of Drupal. Once you get it outside of Drupal, you take that code and you you just put it right there. Okay? That's it. Because that is what's going to actually do the upload for you. And so you can see here, I'm actually doing this upload here, and I've got some JavaScript settings that I'm setting using Drupal.js. And here is an array that I'm using JSON encode, so just to make it look pretty, of all my settings for Swift Upload. So Swift Upload has like this upload URL, and it has like post name, and there's your post parameters. So if your external CDN allows you to change title or any of those type of things, you just put them in that, and you output it. And then here's your JavaScript file. Here's what's really cool. Whenever I said, hey, use JavaScript to replace the media ID into that text field, this is it. Swift Upload, because you have JavaScript bindings, you can bind to something called upload success, which tells you whenever that video is done uploading. All you do is you bind to that you parse the JSON data, it gives you the ID, and you just put that in the value, the text field. So whenever they hit submit, all they're submitting is the ID for the video that was uploaded. And this works beautifully, guys. Works really well. Another thing is I'm working on it. So I know I hate showing code and be like, oh, yeah, all you have to do is write code. And this thing works. But I'm working on getting a module out there so that all of this direct upload works. Because right now, managing videos, large videos in Drupal, it's still immature. It's, for as long as Drupal's been around, I don't think we've ever really gotten it right. And actually, I take that back. We kind of got it right in Drupal 6, because there were some modules in Drupal 6 that allowed you to do this. Well, not direct upload, but they got close. But anyway, I'm working on this. If we have time, we have just a little bit of time, so I'm going to breeze through this. Typically, I give my entire presentation over displaying media. But I do want to just run you through the other part of working with the CDN, which is now you have these sources from all different kinds of sources. You have YouTube, you have Vimeo, you may have CDN, all of these different sources are coming into your site. Now, how do you want to display that? And I have written a module called MediaFront. And that's pretty much the whole purpose of MediaFront, is to be able to display in a coherent manner media from all different kinds of sources. If you're just wanting to display media from like local, there's many options out there for you. There's a projector module, there's media element is another popular one, and I recommend you explore those because those were written for a very specific purpose, whereas MediaFront was really written to be able to handle media from all different kinds of sources, okay? Which has kind of been a headache for me because I'm having to debug it in all these different kinds of sources. Yeah, as you guys already know. But I'm working on that too. So here's some little bullet items from MediaFront. It does have automatic flash fallback, use integration for playlists. It's really cool. Go check it out. I do walk you through here just a little bit. You get MediaFront presets. There you can create presets to basically build your player, and you can customize your player to look however you want it to look in here. If you want to bring in all those videos, those 900 videos that you just imported, you create a view. From that view, you set the style to MediaFront Player. It's real important after you do that you set up all the fields and link them to what you're basically telling what fields the media player should care about. So here's MediaFront settings. Here's the image. You're saying, I want you to care about that. Here is the title. You're saying, hey, I want the MediaFront, I want that to populate my title. The MediaFront settings for the media element is the field type media type media content. And what you get is something that looks like this. People wouldn't even know it's from YouTube. In fact, you can mix and match. You can have media from YouTube, you can have media from Vimeo, you can have media from CDN, you can have MP3s, you can slap them all in the same coherent player, and it plays them as if they're all located on the same server. And that's kind of my point, is as long as you provide your users with a coherent user interface, it doesn't matter where the media comes from. They're going to think that this is all coherent, it's all meant to be together in your own presentation layer. So that's some cool stuff you can do with MediaFront. So here, let's just talk about this full circle before we end up. So you upload your media to Drupal directly to the CDN, providing additional metadata to the remote entity. Feeds then pulls it in, keeping your data synced. So then you can from what I've discussed, you can edit it from the Drupal side or the YouTube side. It doesn't matter. The data stays synchronized no matter how you do it. So yeah, Drupal uses APIs to push the changes to CDN. Feeds will pull the source into from CDN. And also the media display is agnostic of source. And that's also another very, very important fact. So that's it, guys. Does anybody have any questions?